You know, it has been actually a little bit of time since the last time I spoke about ANBERNIC, mostly because there hasn't been anything especially interesting since the release of the RG Slide, which, don't get me wrong, that was a really cool device and something a lot of people have been asking for. A PSP Go style handheld is something that we have sorely needed. But I was honestly kind of hoping for like a more budget-friendly dual-screen handheld from them, which might be coming down the road, but at the moment, they're just sort of content on releasing just more variants of the same product. Currently, they recently have announced the ANBERNIC RG 476H, which is a bit of a mouthful, doesn't really roll off the tongue as nicely as some of their other handhelds of the past, but this device is essentially a non-sliding version of the Slide, down to the fact that it even shares the same 4.7-inch 1280 by 960 120Hz display, which them sharing a display isn't inherently bad or anything. It just kind of feels like they like to keep all of their devices on the same platform. And it seems like we're now in another one of those shifts where they're slowly moving towards a new design language. And so now they're going to go through the process of slowly updating all their things, giving you a reason to purchase them again. ANBERNIC hasn't revealed the entire spec list, but judging by the games it supports and by how similar it is to the Slide and many of their other devices, it's probably coming with a Unisoc T820 chipset, which we're all very much familiar with and is capable of pretty decent emulation, including things like 3DS and PS2, GameCube, pretty much your favorite 3D machines, maxing out around 3DS, but you probably could get some Switch games to work, but you probably shouldn't, and it is capable of light Windows emulation depending on what your goal is. Alongside that, we currently don't know how much storage or RAM this is going to have, but like I said before, given its similarities to many other of their T820 chipset devices, I wouldn't be too surprised to see about 6 to 8 gigs of memory with a base model of 128 gigs, and then on the high end of 256, which starting prices are going to be probably around $150 to $200. I would really like this thing to be under 150, especially considering if it's very similar in terms of design language and whatnot to the Slide. Maybe not having the sliding mechanism might make the device significantly cheaper to produce, enabling them to charge a much lower price point. And at the below $150 price point, it could become a serious value. I remember during the holiday season last year, they were selling the 556, their much larger 7.6-inch, whatever size it was, larger format OLED-based handheld. Wasn't high refresh rate, but it was a pretty darn nice OLED, and that got as low as $120 during their last-minute holiday sales event. And that device at that price was a killer deal. Very similar to getting the original Odin at a discount. It was honestly a pretty fantastic deal, and it uses the same T820 chipset. So if this has like a base price of like $140 and maybe goes on sale for like $110, that would be honestly one of the best deals in handheld emulation. Even at a base price of about $150, it would be incredibly competitive with so many other handhelds, because that is such an underserved and overserved at the same time market segment. It's underserved in the sense that there aren't a ton of super powerful options. We're dealing with, at that price point, a lot of competitions from used phones and significantly cheaper lower-end handhelds. There aren't very many handhelds trying to give you GameCube at the below $200 price point. At that below the $150 price point, it starts becoming even more rare to see the ability to play the higher-end systems. Even though I do advocate for the people to recycle and reuse and repurpose their old Android smartphones and whatnot and convert them into gaming handhelds, I get some people might not be super into that, especially all of the effort it might take to get that all set up. So this would be a great alternative, especially considering you can find a lot of those aftermarket Android phones that would perform the same or better than a lot of these cheaper emulation handhelds for around the same price. For me personally, I remember when I did this whole turning an Android phone into a gaming handheld thing, I purchased a Galaxy S10e all the way back in 2022, I believe, and it was around $110. It had a Snapdragon 865, or is it 855? Don't remember, but it was still a pretty decent chipset, and we even seen devices like the Rotary Pocket 5 and 5 Mini use the same chipset. So it is still plenty powerful, and you slap a controller onto it, that's a great machine. I haven't looked at side-by-side comparisons, but just by the fact that it is Snapdragon, a lot of these emulators optimized for Snapdragon chipsets, it wouldn't be too surprising to see this old Android phone from 2019 would run circles around the T820 chipset. I already said it, but I didn't actually check the benchmarks on that. Let me know down below if I was right or not, because I don't really want to search that up at the moment. There is one benefit though all these handhelds have, including the RG476H, and that is active cooling. The one major downside with using an old mobile phone is that thermal constraints can be a serious bottleneck, especially if you're trying to do the most cutting edge of Windows emulation on your Android handheld. If you've got something like an old ROG phone and it had that active cooler thing, it becomes less of an issue, but it is something to actually start becoming a thing with more modern handhelds, is that these cooling solutions actually go a long way in making these mobile phone chipsets be significantly more powerful. Something I neglected to mention is that this device will probably be running Android. The Slide did, and many other of their T820 chipset handhelds also ran Android, so I wouldn't be too surprised if it's also ran Android. And I've never really seen them charge more than maybe $100 for a handheld that didn't have Android on it. I think they keep mostly the Linux-based handhelds at the cheaper end of things because of reasons. Some of you might have noticed already, but they did do a redesign. It is one of those devices with a giant flat sheet of glass covering the top, which I always liked, but I hated it when they called it bezel-less, because it is still there, you just covered it all in glass. So it looks like it doesn't have a bezel, but just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. Either way, it doesn't really matter. They aren't claiming a zero bezel design, because it clearly still does, but they have talked about how it does support second dual screen stuff for the 3DS and Nintendo DS, which is really cool to start seeing this more sort of dual screen attachment thing start to really proliferate through a bunch of other handhelds. I would really like to see a more budget-friendly dual screen handheld from them, which hopefully we'll see at some point in the future. But as it currently stands, we have to just be okay with using some sort of second screen attachment rather than getting a dedicated handheld from them using two screens. I'd be really personally interested seeing a PSP Go style device with a sliding mechanism and whatnot, and when you slide it, it comes out with a second screen and controls. That would be kinda sick. But I would love to hear what you guys think about this down below. Are you excited for the ANBERNIC RG476H? Are you planning on purchasing it, or are you waiting for something a little bit more interesting? All that and more down below. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All the other social media garbage down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.